welcome to the Big Bear Homestead. Today on Kitchen Time, I'm going to show you one of my favorite go-to meals that takes no time at all to make, and it's fairly reasonable as far as cost. So today, we're going to make lasagna rolls and garlic bread. Okay, so garlic bread's pretty self-explanatory, but what are lasagna rolls? Well, obviously it's lasagna, but instead of making a full pan, you make each lasagna individual into a roll. Now let me tell you a little bit about the backstory of this recipe. Of course, everybody knows I was not always the best cook in the kitchen. I had to do a lot of research and a lot of practicing and a lot of failing before I figured out exactly what I liked and what I didn't like and what my kids liked as well. A lot of times my children would go somewhere and we would eat lasagna and they absolutely loved it. I even had a friend who used to raid the entire grocery store and get all of these ingredients and take all day to make a lasagna. Of course, I was extremely intimidated by that. So, started doing a little bit of research, and as I was going through some recipes, one thing that I did when I was really early on learning about cooking, I had a subscription to a Taste of Home magazine that was absolutely wonderful. It was real quick recipes and quick and easy recipes or something like that. And this is where I found that recipe. Now, of course, over the years I've tweaked it, and I don't have all the measurements exact, but we'll get to that. And you know that I don't always have all of the ingredients right, so we'll get to that in just a minute. But anyway, I started doing this recipe, and I absolutely love it because it's not an all-day affair. It tastes just as good or about as good as a traditional lasagna, and the cleanup's a lot easier than when you have a big, huge baked pan of lasagna. So come with me and let's make dinner. Okay, so a few housekeeping things you'll need to do first before we get started. One, you're going to need a pan with water, and go ahead and bring it to a boil. That's going to be for the lasagna noodles. Another thing, you're going to need a small saucepan so that we can melt the butter to make the garlic butter spread for the garlic bread. And then also you're going to want to preheat your oven to about 325 to 350. So those things, get those done before we get anything else started. Okay, so let's talk ingredients. First, for your garlic bread, you're obviously going to need garlic. You're going to need 1 to 2 sticks of butter. You'll need a loaf of bread, whether you bake it or you buy store-bought bread. We normally will buy it at the store because they'll have it for like $1 a loaf, and that's only when we need it quick. And this is a quick and easy meal, so that's why we have the store-bought bread. Okay, then for the mixture, you're going to need mozzarella cheese, and this will be in the mixture, but then also on top. You're going to need cottage cheese or ricotta cheese or a mixture of both. You'll need lasagna noodles. You're going to need some frozen chopped spinach. You'll need Parmesan cheese for the mixture and for on top. Also, for the mixture, you're going to need 2 eggs, and you'll need a pound to a pound and a half of the meat, whether it be Italian sausage, ground beef, ground venison, anything like that. You'll want to use that in your mixture. And then to top it all off, we'll put spaghetti sauce. You may need 1 to 2 cans of spaghetti sauce. If you make your own, that's great. But again, this is a recipe that's kind of quick and easy and ready to go. So if you've canned your own or you make your own, that's wonderful as well. Okay, one more thing before I forget. You're obviously going to need a little bit of seasoning for this recipe. So you'll definitely want to grab your salt and pepper and an Italian seasoning blend. I am going to use some essential oils to replicate that, but if you don't have that option, then any Italian seasoning blend will work just fine. Okay, so let's get started. The very first thing we're going to need to do is make the garlic bread mix. And that's going to be the butter and the garlic and a little bit of cheese. So the very first thing I like to do is I grab my butter, 1 to 2 sticks is fine, and I put it in a saucepan. And we'll turn that on real quick. And you want to get it at about medium. And we're going to just take the, obviously unwrap the butter, and we'll put it into the saucepan. We're going to let that melt down. Now, this is something I learned when I was working at an Italian restaurant. What they would do is they would make mass amounts of garlic butter spread so that when it was time to serve the garlic bread, what they would do is just cut the bread, take the spread out, spread it on real quick, put it on the griddle top, and then they would send it out as garlic bread. So I learned that really early on in college. So what they do is they just melt massive amounts of butter. They put the minced garlic in, put a little bit of seasoning or whatever in there as well, and then they put it back in the refrigerator and they let it solidify back into butter. And then that way, instead of spending $2, $3, $4 at the store for something that's already made, make your own. So we're gonna let that melt a little bit. You'll see it's already starting to melt. Doesn't take very long. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put it in a container and we'll put it right back into the refrigerator and let it harden while we're making the rest of our meal. Now that your butter is melted, go ahead and turn your heat off, okay? And you'll want to take, we love garlic, so we usually use about a tablespoon to 2 tablespoons of garlic in the spread. So you'll put that straight into the butter, 1.5 to 2 tablespoons of garlic, and then mix that all together. Okay. And then I add a little bit, and you can do either grated or shredded Parmesan cheese. I just have grated right now, so we're just gonna put a little bit of the grated Parmesan in there. And that's really nice when you go to put it on the hot bread because it just kind of, it'll crust a little bit, but it'll also melt, so it's really tasty. Even if, especially if you do the shredded Parmesan, that's really good. Okay, so about a teaspoon, 2 teaspoons looks about right. Yeah, about 2 teaspoons worth. And then again, mix that all up in there. And you saw it was really clumpy, so I'm gonna mix it up. Put it in there. So you want it to kind of be real consistent so that it kind of spreads throughout. And I'll show you in a second when I put it in the container, you'll be able to see. Now, you can also, at this point, if you want to put some of those Italian seasonings in there, you can do that as well. Just kind of depends on your taste. I'm not really going to do that here. I'm going to keep all of those seasonings for when we actually have the lasagna. So now that it's all stirred in, you're going to take your container and just, we'll see, we'll pour it in there. Now all of your clumps are still going to be on your pan, so make sure you have a spatula. Get all the good stuff out of the bottom. Okay, pour it all in there. And as you can see, that's a really good, and that was just 1 stick of butter. So we'll take that and we'll put the lid on. And then we're gonna put that in the fridge and let it cool until it's time to spread it onto our garlic bread. Okay, so now that you have your garlic butter in the refrigerator, now it's time to move on to the noodles. You have to cook the noodles in order for us to make the lasagna rolls. So like I told you before, go ahead and get a pot, get the water in it, and get it to a rolling boil. Now, before you put your noodles in, put a little bit of oil, whether it's vegetable oil, olive oil, whatever. This will help the noodles not stick to each other while they're cooking. which is really important when you're doing lasagna noodles because they're long and they're bulky, and it's not like spaghetti where you can just kind of mix everything around to keep it from sticking. These will tend to break, so you want to be really careful. So let's go ahead and add our lasagna noodles. Now be prepared. A lot of times when you get a box, they usually have, I'm trying to remember, like, is it 20? Let's see. There's supposed to be like 18 or so noodles in there, but you're always gonna have a couple that are broken. So I always use 2 boxes because you can never have enough of this stuff. You can always have leftovers. So go ahead and take your noodles and just gently place them into your water. And what I like to do is make it into like a star pattern so they're not all on top of each other. And see, like that one's kind of cracked and a little broken, but we'll make it work. Now, we make our own noodles a lot of times for like spaghetti or even ravioli. So you could make lasagna noodles. Obviously the crimp is a little bit different. I know they have some attachments to make those, but you can most definitely make lasagna without the little, the little ridges on the end. You could definitely make lasagna noodles for this and just cook them yourselves. You could do that as well. All right. I think we got pretty fortunate. I don't see any. See, of course, as soon as I say that there would be a broken one, we wouldn't have any broken ones. So I guess I win in the end, but well, see there's a crack in that one. And more than likely that will come off as it's cooking. All right. So there's that one. And we'll go ahead and put a few more in. All right, that looks good for right now. So we're gonna let those cook. I think it says 8 to 12 minutes usually, about 8 minutes. You'll want to stir them so that so you don't keep them from, you want to keep them from sticking to each other. So now while we're waiting for that, we'll go ahead and get our frying pan and we're going to cook up the sausage and get that ready. Oh, water boiling over there. And I'm gonna move this over so that we have enough room to cook here. So let's turn that burner off and turn that one on. And we'll get this one going over here. Okay, so if you have sausage and you buy it in a link, you want to, at least in my opinion, I like to take the casing off and do it as ground meat instead of as links. Now, if you'd like to, you can keep them as links and then cut them into sections if you'd like. But I actually like it ground. So if you want, you can buy it already ground in bulk, but it was cheaper for me to buy it this way. Now, a lot of times when we have our own pork sausage or we have our own venison sausage, it already comes ground just in a bag or whatever. So then in this case, you wouldn't need to do this. But if you have links, one thing I like to do to get the casing off is I take just a simple kitchen fork and I find the hole, wherever the hole is in the casing, and then I put that in there and then I just run it up the side and pull back, and that takes the casing off pretty easily so that way you can peel the casing off. And then I just break it up into pieces. And we'll turn on the pan first. So let's do that. You want to put it on about medium so you don't want to burn it. So we'll do this with all of these. Just put it in there, pull back, and then that way you get a nice clean edge on your casing and you can just pull it right off. There you go. All right. Okay, so our meat is just about done browning. I have stirred the noodles a couple of times. And pretty soon our timer will be ready to tell us that our noodles are done. What you'll do, go ahead and get your strainer. When your meat is done, we're just gonna put it off to the side because that's going to go into our mixture. Depending on, now if you have it in lengths, you wanna make sure to chop the pieces up pretty good because you want this meat to be able to spread really good throughout your mixture. You want it to be kind of consistent. And now back to the noodles, you're gonna want to grab a colander, and as soon as that timer goes off, we'll go ahead and pour all the noodles in there and drain them out so that we can use them. And there you go, there's the timer. All right. Oh, we did good. See, that oil made it so that the noodles did not even stick to the pot. I should film these things more often because this almost always happens to me as well. But if you put the oil in the pot, that's what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to make it so that none of your noodles stick to the pot. Okay, so let's put this back here and we'll grab this pan. Now, one thing that I have learned over time, if you're using a metal colander, make sure that you still have your pot holders when you pour that hot water in there. I can't tell you how many times I have burned myself when I went to go grab the colander thinking, oh, well, you know, I just poured it out of there. It's not on the burner anymore. Of course it's not gonna be hot, right? Boiling noodles. No, of course it's not hot. But go ahead and make sure that you still have your pot holders if you're going to use a metal colander. If you use a plastic, it's not as bad, but the metal definitely still holds the heat. So go ahead and bounce those around, and if you look pretty closely, you'll see they did not stick at all. Okay, so we're gonna put those off to the side, let them continue to just kind of rest a little bit. And the next step is going to be to put everything together. We're gonna put the mixture together and then we'll put everything together into the rolls. Okay, now one little tip when you're dealing with noodles. In this case, we don't want them to stick together. So you can run a little bit of cool water over them to rinse a little bit of the starch off. So I like to just get the noodles and kind of rinse them off a little bit. And that keeps them from sticking to each other, which is kind of important because as you're putting this all together, one, you kind of want them to be cool to the touch so that when you're putting them together, you don't burn yourself. But yeah, just kind of rinse them off and get the starch off of them so they don't stick to each other. Okay, so the very next step is we're going to put our mixture together. So you're gonna need your bowl and your cheese and all that other good stuff. So come with me and let's figure that out next. Okay, one other quick tip. When we went to go get all of our ingredients, the mozzarella, when we bought it already shredded, it was $2 more a pound than buying it in the block. So of course we saved the $2 and we brought it home, and we have a KitchenAid attachment. So we're gonna go ahead and shred our own mozzarella that we'll put into the mixture and then also on top of the lasagna rolls as well. Okay, so now for the mixture. First thing you'll want to do is go ahead and crack your 2 eggs and put those into the bowl. Make sure not to get any shell in there. Now some people will put it in a separate bowl and make sure before they put everything in, but that's why I'm putting these in first so that if I see any shell, I can get it out before I put anything else in there. Okay. Then the next thing you'll want to do is go ahead and whip those up. You want them to kind of be mixed up. And they kind of act like the glue that's going to kind of hold everything together. So you don't need very much. 2 eggs is plenty for this mixture. Okay. Then the next thing you want is you can do all cottage cheese, you can do all ricotta, or you can do a mixture of both. We're gonna go ahead and do a mixture of both. We'll start with the cottage cheese first. And this is a big one. This is a 24 ounce. And I got the small curd. And the reason why I did the small curd is because it's the closest consistency to the ricotta cheese. Because when you have the ricotta, it's gonna be very, very small. So go ahead and put that in there. Now, I'm not real big on measurements, and you'll probably see this because as we make it, we're probably gonna have either too much mixture or too much noodles, but that's why I always have extra noodles. I can always make more rolls, and these store really good in the freezer. You can put them into a container and then put them in the freezer and forget about it until you need a meal, pull it out, put it straight into the oven. Works great. So we put in the cottage cheese. Now we'll put in some ricotta. And again, I bought 2 containers of ricotta just in case I needed it. Sometimes these, they don't really leave you a whole lot of room to be able to pull these plastic off of the top. So, okay, so ricotta, you see, it's almost like there's almost no curd to it. It's almost one solid piece. So you're gonna put that in there. Okay, it comes out almost in one piece there. And we'll mix that together with the egg. And as soon as I get this all mixed, I'll show you what the consistency, what we're looking for. Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and throw in that extra thing of ricotta. I'll show you why in just a second. You can still see a lot of the curd from the cream cheese. So I kind of want to minimize that, so I'm going to put in a little bit more of the ricotta, and also because I like to have leftovers, so that's why we're going to make extra mixture there. So these containers that I got of this ricotta cheese, the measurement on those, they are 15 ounce. So it would be 30 ounces of the ricotta and then the 24 ounce of the cottage cheese. All right. So we'll mix all of that in together real good. And then the rest of this stuff kind of doesn't really matter what order you put it in, but see how it looks now? It's got a lot more, it's a lot more solid, and that's kind of what we want, because we want it to have a good consistency when we're rolling everything up. We don't want it to all fall out the sides and make a big, huge mess. So the next thing I normally put in is I go ahead and put in my garlic and all of my seasonings. And again, because we like garlic so much, we're probably going to put in about 2 tablespoons of garlic. We like to keep the vampires away here. Okay. Mix that in real good. Oh, it smells so good. I wish you guys could smell this. Love the smell of garlic in the house. Okay, just a little bit of salt, maybe about a teaspoon. About half a teaspoon of pepper. Again, mix that all in there real good. You'll see there's not a whole lot of pepper in there. You want just enough to add some flavor. Okay, then we'll put in some Parmesan cheese. You probably want about maybe a half a cup. I'm just gonna go ahead and throw it in there, but probably about a half a cup's worth of Parmesan cheese. And make sure you break up those clumps so that it spreads evenly in there. Okay. And then here comes my favorite part. We're gonna add in the spinach and then also the seasonings. You can put in Italian seasoning. If you do that, I would put in about probably a tablespoon to 2 tablespoons. With our oils, we're just gonna put like a drop in of each. But let's go ahead and put the spinach in. This is I think it's a 10-ounce bag of chopped spinach. You wanna go ahead and make sure that it thaws. I'm sorry, this is a pound. We might not need the full pound. I'm gonna show you what the consistency is supposed to look like, and you could kind of judge based on that. I think normally I use like a 10-ounce box, like the little boxes that they have. But let's see what that does. That was about almost half the bag, so that was about 8 ounces. So I'm thinking about a 10-ounce. Usually a 10-ounce bag works, or a 10-ounce box works really good. I'm just gonna use the leftovers for some spinach dip or something. All right, let's see, just a little bit more. Okay, so you can see the cheese in there pretty good, and you can also see the spinach pretty well. Okay, now we're gonna put, like I said, I'm just gonna put in a drop of each one. Oregano, if you can, you don't have to put a full drop in there, but I'm not afraid of oregano. Somebody I know is. But we're just gonna put 1 drop of each oil. Be very careful because some of these oils are really powerful. That 1 drop will definitely flavor the entire bowl. That was oregano. This is marjoram. You got basil. And then rosemary. Now I don't have time. No, I don't have time to spice. But it'll be all right. We don't, really need the time. But if you do your Italian seasoning, you'll definitely, usually the blend has the marjoram, oregano, rosemary, basil, and thyme, okay? So now that we've got those oils in there, let's go ahead and stir it up real good. Smells magnificent. Okay, now, very last thing, before we start assembling all this, we're gonna put a little bit of our shredded cheese in there and then all of our meat that we cooked, okay? So we shredded the mozzarella, okay? Just maybe like a couple handfuls, maybe about a cup's worth. Put it in there, stir it in. Yeah, that's perfect, about a cup, couple handfuls, depending on your hand size, about a cup's worth, okay? And then you're going to take your meat and we're going to put that in. Now, I didn't tell you to drain your meat. Some people drain it, some people don't. I just use a slotted spatula, so then that way most of the grease stays in the pan. Okay. Really wasn't a whole lot of grease from this. It's pretty lean sausage. That's pretty good. If you use venison, usually if you use venison, you're not gonna have a whole lot of fat anyway. But okay, so that's all the sausage. We're gonna take that, mix it in there as well. Now we have this wonderful mixture that we're going to put into the lasagna noodles. Okay. All right, there's our mixture. That's what it's gonna look like before we put it into the lasagna noodles. Okay, so here comes the fun part. First thing you'll need is a nice little clean workspace, and you're gonna need a little teaspoon. So what you'll do is grab your noodle, put it down on your workspace, and then you're gonna spoon out your mixture, and you're going to smooth it out in the middle of your noodle. Now, just like when we do the pumpkin roll, you don't want to put them all the way to the end on either end, okay? Be careful not to put it too close to the edges, okay? Then, here comes the fun part. You're gonna fold your noodle over, okay? And then roll it up. Okay? And then when you get to the end, go ahead and place it in your dish and move on to the next one. Get your noodle. It's a good thing we rinse those because a lot of that starch has definitely come off. Okay. Do it again. You definitely want to leave a little bit of a gap on the end, about 3/4 of an inch, half an inch, somewhere around there. Because as you're rolling up the mixture, it will start to move, slide a little bit. So you want to make sure that you have that space left over at the end. Okay? So fold it up in there and then just gently roll it. Get to the end, that noodle will go up in there. And get your next one. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and put the rest of these noodles together, get them in the pan, and then I'll show you what to do next. Okay, so now we have them all put together. We're gonna pour the sauce and the cheese over them and put them in the oven. And it looks like we got 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. So we made 19 noodles with that amount that I told you. So you're just gonna pour the sauce over the top of the noodles. Okay? And then sprinkle a little bit of your cheese on the top. And then you're gonna put those in the oven and bake for 30 to 45 minutes. All right, so about 10 minutes before your lasagna rolls are ready, go ahead and get your garlic butter out of the refrigerator and go ahead and slice your bread. We're just gonna open it up. Okay, and then take your spoon and just kind of, I like to mix up. See, the thing is, the only problem with this is that a lot of times your butter will go to the top and your mixture will go to the bottom. But because it's been sitting in the refrigerator, it has hardened enough to where it's a soft spread. So just make sure you mix up the stuff that was on the bottom, whether it's the garlic, the Parmesan cheese. Mix it all together and then just lightly spread it onto your bread. And then you'll just throw that in the oven and it should all be ready at about the same time. I try to time my stuff so that it all comes out about the same time, because there's nothing worse than having your food ready and everybody's waiting on garlic bread. That doesn't work in this house because everybody loves the lasagna rolls, and if the garlic bread's not ready, they're not happy. I have restless eaters in the house. Now the other thing that you can do with this as well is some of that leftover mozzarella cheese. You can also add that to your mixture if you'd like. Or you can put it on top and kind of help it to bake along. The other thing too, if you have a little bit, I had to open up a second container of the spaghetti sauce. And what you can do with that is heat that up in a pan if you'd like, or cold. My husband doesn't mind if it's cold. And you can have that for dipping for your bread. You know, a lot of people like to dip the garlic bread into spaghetti sauce. So that's another thing you can do, so that way you don't have any leftovers sitting in the refrigerator. Okay, so that's all spread on there. I'm gonna put just a little bit of the mozzarella cheese on top, just a teeny bit, so that it'll melt, not burn. Don't want so much that it burns and bubbles and makes a big mess. You want just enough on there. Okay, and then we'll put this in the oven, and when your timer goes off for your lasagna, your bread should be ready as well. Okay guys, the moment we've all been waiting for. The oven has finally, the timer went off, and everything is ready to go. Let me let you see what this looks like. Your cheese should be melted on the top. Don't really want it to brown and burn, because then it kind of gets a little chewy and that's not very good. Of course, there's our second pan. And then also, here's what your bread should look like. You see how the cheese just barely started to brown on top? That's what you want it to look like. Okay? Well, it's been really nice spending this time with you guys. Hopefully you've learned something new. I know I don't see a lot of recipes for lasagna rolls as opposed to a plate of lasagna. Let me show you something real quick before we say goodbye. This is one of the reasons why I really like this recipe. When it's time to serve it, each roll is individual, so instead of going into a pan and having to chop out a piece, all you have to do is find out where that roll was and cut into it, and then just scoop it out. And it's one layer by itself. And it goes right onto the plate. And you see how easy that was? And there, one portion, you're ready to go for your children. You only need one roll for adults, two. And there you have it. There's no guessing about how much to serve somebody. So I'm gonna slice up a little bit of bread, and it's time for us to have dinner. Thanks for coming by, and have a nice day.